Hi and welcome to another tutorial from Blender Insight. This time I was thinking that we should do a more flexible brick texture compared to the one that comes with Blender. Because we have some things here that I don't like. So let's say we have an offset, then we can change this for like every second row. Or we can change it for every third row if we want that. But what we can't do here is that we can't change every single row to be in some kind of offset. So I think that is a limitation that we should fix. It's also so that if we go really close here and look at the mortar smoothness, so even if we increase the mortar smoothness, the corners are still square. I would like this to be more round. It also so that if you change the mortar size, it's a very big jump between those two here, and you have hardly any chance to get back if you don't manually write in a small value. So it's a bit clumsy, so I think that we should fix that as well. So let's take away the brick texture and do a new texture from the beginning by just using math. So the brick texture uses some type of scale, so we add that, Shift A, go to Converter, Vector Math, and here you can find the scale. And we put that to the UV, we can put the scale of 5 or 6 or something like that. Then they also use some row and height, so that means that we need to modify this scale a bit, and we can do that with the multiply. So we press Shift D to duplicate and change this to a multiply. So here we can have like 0.5 here and 1 here, for instance, or we can have 0.5. So we have something like this. And then we need to make bricks out of this. So we need to split it up. Right now it looks like this, and I would like this to be bricks. So we use a fraction. So I copy this, Shift D, and I use a fraction. And now you can see it's bricks here. Next step I would like to do is to move this little point here, because that is the darkest point, to the center, and then we get, and finally getting the same value on each edge here. Now we don't have that, we have different types of value. So that we can also do by adding two nodes, a subtract and a multiply. So start with the subtract, just duplicate the fraction, set it to subtract, and put those two to 0.5. And now you can see that the darkest spot is now in the center here, but we need to increase the brightness a bit, because now it's negative 0.5 to positive 0.5, and I would like it to be negative 1, positive 1. So we multiply with 2, so duplicate, subtract, and change it to multiply and change this to 2. So next step is to get it in similar here as it is here, and that we can use with an absolute, because an absolute takes away the negative values and make them positive. So then we get positive values in all directions. So Shift D to duplicate again, and we use an absolute. So now you can see it starts to look a bit like tiles, not perfect, but we are closer. And you can say that this is a tile here, because we have a dark corner, a dark corner, a dark corner, and a dark corner, and it's bright here in the center. However, it starts as a half of a brick, and it ends as a half a brick, and the height is a half of a brick. So to make a complete brick starting point, we can just subtract this with -1, or use 1 minus the value here. So Shift D, subtract, and put 1 in the top here, and now you can see we have something that is good looking. Now this is just a UV map, so we need to transform it into real tiles. So let's do that by separating the X. Separate XYZ like this, And then we can use a smooth minimum. And I can show you why. So if I put Shift A, converter, go to regular math, change this to a smooth minimum, and put the X and Y to compare which is the lesser of these two, and put that to the base color, we got tiles. The reason that I selected a smooth minimum and not the minimum is that we have the distance. And the distance fixes the first point that I have here, which is the corners. So if I have 0, you have a square, but then I can take it up and you get round corners here. So that is one of the things you can't do with the brick texture that I would like to include here. However, right now it's looking like a pyramid, so I would like this to go away. And to do that, I can just use the small amount of values here and just transform those small values into 0 to 1. And that I can do with a map range. So you will see what happens if I put that in. So I press Shift A, converter, and select map range. And if I now take and decrease from max, then I go down from this highest point where it's 1 to the lower values down here, and everything up here will be flat. So as you can see now, it gets more and more like a square here, and those lower values are then transformed back into a value between 0 and 1. So that means when I take it up, that we now get flat, good looking bricks here. And to make this even smoother, we can change the linear into smoother step here, and then we can change this really good and easy to make the mortar size bigger or smaller in an easy way. And we can also change if we would like to have these rounded corners. So that means that we now have some type of brick texture already. And I would like to make a node group out of this. So everything from the scale in the beginning to the map range in the end. So select all of those like this and just press Ctrl J. So we have a new node group. And here we can then put some values in the input here that we will change later on. So for instance, the scale could be good to have that. Also the height and width of our bricks, but to get it in a good way, we might have those separated. So we can use a combine XYZ. So Shift A, converter, combine XYZ like this. And we put that first to 0.5 and the last one to 1, and then we get this back. And then it's just to drag the X here and the Y here to the group input. But to understand what this is, we can change the name. So we go to group, the tab here, double click on X, and that will be the width. And then we can change the Y by double click and say that this should be the height. So then we have that in as well. More things that we could put in is the distance, which then is the corners. So we take the values from the distance here to the group input. So all the way from the distance to the group input. And we get a name value. We double click on that and change this to corner smoothness. So then we have that in as well. And finally, we would like to be able to change the size of the width of the mortar. So we can take it from a max here, so the second one, and also drag that to the input. So it's all the way to the input here, and change from max to mortar width. So now we have all that information in this group. So if I select the group input and then press tab, we only have this simple little node now that we can use. And right now it's just called node group, so we can select it, go to properties, and change this to brick texture version 2. So then we have that in. And right now we can do some changes already. That is good to use. We can change the width, the height, we can do a lot of stuff here that we already can do in the brick texture. But we don't have any offset, so that would be the next step. So to make offset, we can go back to the brick texture again by pressing Tab after we select it. And then we need an offset, and we put that offset between the multiply and the fraction, because after the fraction we start to build all these tiles, but we would like to make an offset of the complete row, not tile by tile, so it's easier to put it after the multiply here. And one way to do that is to use something called floor. So if I drag here and just write floor, then you can see what happens if I then separate this with an XYZ first. So Shift A, converter, separate XYZ. So if I now take the X here to the result, you can see that we get values out. And now they are like integers, which means that they don't have any decimals. So everything here is 0, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the same in the Y direction. So here we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. So that we can use to make an offset. So let's say that this should be 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, and so on. That is possible by using a modulo, because a modulo is repeating those values so we get it exactly as we want to. So if I press Shift A here, go to Converter Math, and change this to a floor modulo, see if we can find it. There we have a floor modulo, and change the value here to 2. We get every second. If we change it to 3, we get 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, and so on. And that means that for each row we can do some offset here. And here we have an advantage compared to the old brick texture, because in the old we could only change every second row, every third row, and so on. But here we can change every row and say that we just have steps, that we have 3 steps. So we will do offset in these 3 steps, and then it will be reset to the start again. Right now we have the value 0, 1, 2, and that is a bit too much to offset. It should be more like 0.1, 0.2 or something like that. So we add a multiplication after this modulo. So Shift D and a multiply, and we just put that to X, as I said, 0.2 or something like that. Now this should then be added to the X direction, so we can move all our bricks a little bit, and that we should do between the multiply and fraction as well. So I suggest that we take all of this in the beginning, just drag it out so we get some space, and we take this part here and put it here, and then we can just add a subtract up here. So Shift A, converter vector math, put that in, change it to subtract. So now it says subtract here, and as I said, we would like to use this value here to change the X direction. So we can use the subtract, we can use an add, it doesn't matter so much. We just need to have some deviation between so we get in the offset. But that means that we also need to add some combine here. So we can take this one, Shift D, just drag it here and put it to the bottom here. And now we can put in the value that we calculated into the X here, and then we pushes the bricks a bit back or forth depending on what value we put in the floor here, or in a multiply. So if we look at the result now, change this to the result, you can see that we now get an offset. And if we would like to have it as the brick texture, then we can use a 2-step here, And then if we change this multiply, you can see it changes every second row. But if we put 3 here, it doesn't change every second row, it changes in 3 steps. So it changes this one, this one, this one, and then it resets, starts there, and then this one, and then this one. So that is a good way to change things, because now you can see it changes everything here. And that is more flexible than just having it as it was in the old brick texture. So what I would like to do now is that we take this part that we have done for the offset and do a node group out of that as well. So we can select everything here and just press Ctrl G to get in here, and then here we can then add information to this. So this is the floor modular, and that was the steps. So then we can double click on the value here and write that this should be offset steps. So we have that, and then we have value. So then we put that in here and put that to offset value. And then it will be easier to maintain later on, since everything is in this node group. So now can we select group input and then press tab to get out again, and now we have it here, and we can now change the name for the node group. So we go to node, and in properties you just change this to offset. So now we have this an offset, and we know that, and we take these values, offset step and offset value, directly to the group input. And now we don't have to change the names because they are already in the group here. So we just drag them here, offset step, offset value, and if I take the group input and press tab, then I'm back to my base group node, and now you can see we can change the offset here as well as we want to with the amount of steps that we would like to put in here. So it works really nice with everything, with the motor width and what we now would like to have. We have some problem with the motor width. I saw right now, you can see it disappears here. So we can build in a security as well if we want to. We can say that 0.05 should be the smallest value. So we go back by pressing tab, and we now have a value that goes to this one, and this value here, that value should never be below 0.05. You can see here that it's now it's a long way and a lot of scrolling, but you have the motor width here. So by adding a max here, I can then put max here, and I can put 0.05 here, and that means that it takes the maximum value of the motor width, and if that value should be lower than 0.05, it will be 0.05. Other than that, it will take the value that we have from the motor width. So then we just use this maximum into the from max instead. Put that in here, and if I now go out again, a lot of jumping back and forth, but if I now take this one, press tab, so I'm out again, now I can take down the motor width and nothing will happen. So that is a really good way to make everything secure like that. You can of course also put in that it should never go below 0, but that you do in the parameters. So if I press tab again, then you can see we have a motor width here. So if I go to group motor width, then you can see we have default values here with the minimum and maximum. So here we can say never below 0, and the maximum could be 1, for instance. So then we have some limit on the motor width as well. Okay, that was a little bit of a parenthesis. The thing that we have left right now is to try to make some random color out of this. And then we need to have some values on each of these bricks here. And that we can do as well. But before we do that, I think we should take the complete information we have for the bricks, which is from fraction here, and this part here and also this part here, and do a group node out of that as well, so we don't need to have it here. So Control G, and what we need in this is that we can change. We don't need to change anything. We have everything here, but we should change the name or value on from max. And if we don't remember, we can just go back, see where they are connected, and then we can see that the first one, that is called value in the node group, that is called smoothness, and the other one was mortar width. So if we go back again, then I can change the first value by clicking on the group input to mortar smoothness, like this, and the other one was mortar width. So then we write mortar width here, and then we know that for the future when using this group input. So now we can go back again, and we can change this to another name. So we can go to node, for instance, and then select node group first, and then change this to like base brick set, for instance. And we could also do like this, that we take this subtract into this value here. So if I go to tab, then I can take and do a subtract here, because it's no use to have it outside. And I take the vector to this one and that to the vector here, and now everything got black, but that is because we have the subtract outside as well. So if I select the group input, go back, just put this in here instead, take away the subtract, then everything is back. And now it's really easy to follow, because now we only have the offset and the base brick set like this and nothing more. So now we can add the color as well. So we need to build something for that, and we can do that by adding it between the offset and the base brick set. So if I take and do floor here, and then separate that, separate X, Y, Z, you can see that if I put in the X, you get values that are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you get a repetitive value every row. But on the Y-axis, we have a low value here, and then that value increases every time here. So we could use the Y-axis to add that into the X, and by that increasing the value for each brick. So we get the new value for each brick. And that we do by adding an add. So Shift A, converter math, add, and put those together, X and Y. But we need a little bit more here, and that is a multiplication of the amount of bricks here, because we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it should continue with 7. So it needs to know that we have put in those 7 first, or those 6 bricks first, and then we can add 6 to this one, and then it continues 7, 8, 9, and so on. And to do that, we add a multiply. So Shift D, put that not here but on the Y-axis. So I change that to multiply, and put in the scale here. But we also need to know the amount that we changed for the width, because it could be really long bricks, and then even if we have a scale of 5, then the brick could be so long that we only have 2 bricks. So we need to put scale and width together. So we multiply, press Shift A again, converter math, multiply the scale and the width. So now we have something here, but that could also be so that we move it so much so it doesn't get to be a complete brick here, and then it's hard for them to calculate if it's like 7.2 or something like that. So we need to round it as well. So we put in round here, and now we put that to the value here. And now you can see that everything is now increasing for this result here. So this is a way to do that, and we can also add just a new number here so we don't have 0 on the first row. So let's say that we press Shift D, add 1 here, no, not here, we take away that one. So we have it like this. Let me see here, yeah, we can add something down here, so we add 1 here. What I'm thinking about now is why the lowest here is 0, but that is because the lowest value is from this one 0. So we get 0 on the first row all the way, and that I would like to avoid. So I'm thinking out a way to make this a little bit higher. So we should be able to, if I take this Shift D and I add 1 here and 1 here, okay, then we increase everything like this. Since it's random now, we should have just the random color. It doesn't matter so much exactly what the values are here. The information that is vital is more that this should not be equal to this. It should be different values. So what we can do now is that we can add a white noise texture. So Shift A, converter, and texture, and white noise texture, and change the 3D to 1D, and put that in here, and put that to the result. And then you see that every stone here will then have another grayscale. So that we can use when we would like to make some color changes between color 1 and color 2. So then we add a color mix, Shift A, and go to color, mix color, like this. And we can take this factor in here, and then this will be color 1 and this will be color 2. So then we drag all the way, we can move this all the way here. So we just reach 1 for color 1 and 1 for color 2. And now it only says A and B, so that means that we go to group input, go to group, change A to color 1, and change B to color 2. So then we have those colors in, and then we can drag away the mix again, so that is the last one. So we have that in as well. And after that, now we only need to mix that with the result here. But before we do it, I would like to add 2 different colors here. So let's go out by pressing group input, pressing tab, and then put this to like red or something like that. And we can use that as white, so that is okay. So now we have different colors, as you can see, and we go back again here. So we get these in here, and here we have value, and we have color A, we have color B, and we have a result out. Because we look at this result instead, because as you can see, we take that, now we can see the result out. Go to result, we can take away this one. The result should not be float, it should be a color. And now when it's color here, then you can see it gets color here. And the only thing now is that we have the old result, this, let me see, here we have the base brick set. Base brick set. We have this one, and we have this one, and now we only need to combine them. So I can take this and copy it, Shift D, and I can take the result from the base brick set to this one, and then we can put this in the bottom and take this to the result. And now we also have the mortar color, so then we can change this into different colors here, and then you can see we change the mortar color as well. So then we drag that all the way to the end, and we can call this mortar color. So then we have that in as well. And if I go back now, then we have our brick texture 2, where we can change mortar color as we want to. We can change the color of these bricks here in different versions. How we do, it doesn't matter what color we put here, it's up to you what you would like to do. We can change the mortar width rather easily. We can do some brighter color here so you can see what I'm doing. So put that like this, and we can put that to more red. So now you can see what I'm doing again. Yes, so we had a mortar width, we have the corner smoothness, we have an offset value that we can change, and we can change the steps as well. So we can put that to 4 for instance, and a small value, and then you can see it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it starts all over again. So we have that, and we have the height of the stones that we can change, and we can change the width and the scale in total as well, and everything works really nice. So of course you can do a lot more into this with rotation of the stones and everything here, but and also this bias thing that you have in the old brick texture, where you can decide if it should be mostly color 1 or mostly color 2. But I will not take it here because I think this is good enough for you to have, and hopefully it was not too fast and that you learned something about how you can create your own nice little brick texture in this session. So I think I'm finished now, so I say bye for now and see you later.